Hi, Krow. Can you hear me? Can I hear you? That's what my my grandmother said when she put her hearing aid in. She said, "Can I hear you now? Can you hear me now?" Something like that.
Uh-huh.
There we go. Okay.
No. Can you hear me now?
I can indeed. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
I gotta plug all this stuff in.
Hmm.
Oh, the headphones are failing me.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Are they supposed to have batteries and stuff, but they're run down?
No, it's got a physical switch on it for on and off, and I'm pretty sure that I've turned it off off and on well past its lifetime.
It
So
looks
now
pretty
I
cool.
just
It looked like you could go to the moon in those things.
they're amazing. It's like sitting in a concert hall when you play
Cool.
music online. So, yeah.
Okay, good. I've got the, I'll get started with the prayer this week and then we can roll it.
Okay.
Heavenly Father, I pray for the residents, council, and reeve of this rural municipality. I pray for the residents, councils, and mayors of the villages in this rural municipality. I pray for the residents, council, and mayor of the capital city of this province. I pray for the MLAs and the premier of this province. I pray for all the people of this province. May we discern the truth and may we find the courage to stand up for what is right. I pray for the MPs and the Prime Minister of Canada. I pray for all the people of Canada. May we discern the truth and may we find the courage to stand up for what is right. I pray for the Congress, Supreme Court, and President of the United States. I pray also for the people of the United States. May we discern the truth and may we find the courage to stand up for what is right. I pray for the leaders of all the countries of this world. And finally, Father, I pray for all of the people of this world. May we discern the truth and may we find the courage to stand up for what is right. Amen.
Amen.
I guess I'll get right into it. Apparently we had a State of the Union speech this week. I didn't notice because I had stopped noticing that we apparently have a president. I'm not sure. I forgot about President What's-His-Name for a while.
Oh my.
To be perfectly honest.
I didn't even watch it. I just read the highlights and it was just a display of moronic idiocy is really what it was.
I didn't watch it either. I saw it in a comment. Somebody made a journal in one of my user groups that I go on, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, so I commented basically something like that. We have to whatever, like what I said a little bit ago about it. It's like it completely went under my radar.
It was like the State of the Union was written from Stalin's notebooks. I mean, people don't understand. Stalin had the very best of intentions for his people. This is why he was in charge. This is he was trusted, and he proposed so many social programs under communism. It's like communism was good for most Russians. That's what people don't understand. It was good for most Russians.
Yeah.
For the ones that it wasn't good for, it was really, really bad for.
Yeah.
That's what you got to
Mm-hmm.
understand. This is why, this is why communism doesn't fall. Because I mean, people, you can do pretty good under communism if you're
Mm-hmm.
clever enough, and people were. In fact, when the wall came down and the Soviet Union was dissolved, there were many, many holdouts for communism, but they didn't survive the economic change that came as a result of the wall coming down. I mean, they weren't like, they weren't taken over by armies or anything. Just economically, it was not a feasible governance system. When everybody else around you is getting into capitalism and you're the only one that's remaining communism, you're going to end up with a problem really, really fast. And so that's what ended up happening with most of the Baltic nations that were under the Soviet Union banner. So, yeah, just because a leader did some horrible things doesn't mean that they were not admired or well liked by another group. I mean, how else would they be able to stay in power if that was not so? You can't stay in power with everybody hating you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at what's going on in other in countries where the restrictions for the pandemic are quite severe. People are coming out in the streets in millions, and they're pissed off. You don't think those governments are just a little bit scared? I mean, what is the army going to do? Army ain't going to. The armies are not going to fire on their own people, because the people that are at the top now are there because they didn't like the way the old guard was. That's how they ended up getting in there. They worked their way out and they said, I'm never going to be like that. And I want these old bastards out of the way. And that pretty much happened through the 90s. People don't live forever. I mean, a lot of old generals died. New generals came in. They didn't like the way things were done, so they started changing things. That's, it's just natural progression of things. Uh, Everything is always switch as time marches forward. It's always back and forth. Uh, some the original generals coming up through the Cold War. It was in their best interest to do selfish things and treacherous things sometimes, and it worked for them, and so they kept it up. But then the younger generation coming up through sees that they don't like it. Yeah, some will, but there's a lot that didn't. And so when these old people died off and new ones came in, they had a different mindset in what they wanted to do. They weren't caught up in the old Cold War stuff. Some people go along with it. They make deals with the devil, mostly because it's self-serving and they want to profit. But the thing is that generally speaking, intelligent people don't operate in a deceptive way. Why? Again, mostly out of self-interest, because intelligent people understand that you cannot keep that act up indefinitely. So it's far, far more advantageous to operate from a place of integrity. And the real, and if you're really clever, you walk that line. This is what we call gray hats. You walk that line between light and darkness. You don't necessarily like the darkness, but you see the advantage of it. And as for the light, maybe it's too rigid in its belief system or how it operates, and it's like, well, that's no good. Some of us thrive in dysfunctionality. So that's sometimes we just end up walking that gray line. It's because it's like, well, that seems like too much work, and well, I can always hide in the dark. You know, you see it both ways. And when you see it both ways, then you can move up through the ranks if you can see it really good. I mean, I see everything both ways, unfortunately. It's like I see the victim's point of view, but I also see the aggressor's point of view because I want to know what's going on. Okay, how did the victim end up in a position where they became a victim? Oh, you went down a dark alley at what time? And in what part of town? It's like, okay, you know what? Yeah, you're the victim, but I'm not sure I can muster any empathy for your stupidity, essentially. When you could have took the long way around and you were in light and you were around people, perfectly safe. And then you get the aggressor. Okay, you did what? Why? Oh, because you got starving family, or you've got a dying child. Okay, or you just did it because it was fun. Well, then you're going to jail because now you're just a nuisance to society. But there's a reason for everything, and maybe Nietzschean is correct. Everybody is inherently good. It's the circumstances and the environment that we are exposed to that changes that, either for something productive or something destructive. So yeah, little walk down the psychology road.
Okay. So how about the energy this week? Wasn't it something else?
It was all over the place.
Yes.
And I don't think that I expected the energy to change this quickly.
Mm.
I kind of expected things to really start rolling later on this year. Not going to say when, because we don't like doing time anymore. It's just silly. But I don't know. I think this might have been a precursor to the experience that is coming. It's kind of like the warm-up act. And I think this is actually the third warm-up act that I've experienced in the last year. And it's and it had an effect this week, actually. It did have an effect because a lot of stupid decisions were made this week by, like, Rudy Giuliani apartment got raided this week. Whose bright idea was that? And what do you think you're going to do with that? So that's one big stupid decision. And on top of that, they illegally executed the warrant. You're going in with a subpoena into a ex-prosecutor's home, and you don't execute the warrant properly? How stupid do you have to be for that? I mean, basically the FBI agents just handed him a mistrial on a golden platter, essentially, is what they did. And so, because they made at least two mistakes in the execution of that warrant, at least. And those are just the two on the surface. One, they didn't take, the first mistake was that they didn't take the copies of Hunter Biden's laptop that Rudy Giuliani had. Rudy Giuliani, they were seizing, the warrant basically said to seize all electronic devices in the house, except the warrant did not say to seize everything except Hunter Biden's hard drives. It said everything. So Rudy Giuliani pointed it out. Hey, you know, are you sure? Do you want these hard drives? They were like, what are they? They're copies of Hunter Biden's laptop. And they were like, no, 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 no. We don't want nothing to do with that. The second mistake they made is they took Rudy's word that they were copies of Hunter Biden's laptop. They could have just as easily been copies from Donald Trump's laptop, just as easily. But they took his word for it. So not only did they leave the devices behind, they failed to confirm what the devices contained.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like shaking my head. So that was one.
You got me at they went in to raid for a specific type of specific type of material, and they left some of it. I'm like, okay, why?
That's like going.
It's just funny.
That's like going into a drug bust and leaving the money behind.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do that. You take it all. Yeah. Oh man. So, and then the sloppiness of their propaganda this week.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they aren't even trying anymore. It's either that, it's just the stupidity. Big COVID outbreak in India, mainstream media. Well, okay, except the pictures that you used are from 2015 and a gas leak in India. And it's like, so what the hell's going on there? You're using photographs from 2015 from a gas leak where a bunch of people got sick and passed out. And you're telling me in this article with the same picture that this is a picture of people dropping dead in the street from COVID. It's the same shit that they scared us with last year at about this time in order to start the pandemic. All these people dropping dead in China. And we believed it, only to find out later that it was bullshit. And so now we don't know what to believe. I mean, China says less than 1 million people died in China. Wait a second. What happened to all the dead bodies on the street that you were propaganding us with? It's like, didn't make any sense. And yeah, one of the largest populations in the world and has less deaths than the United States. How does that make any fucking sense? People, a little bit of discernment, please. So yeah, so we know that we were being lied to. But then on the other hand, there were 21 million cell phones that went dark and didn't turn back on. So there's that. And I have seen videos of those cell phones being scooped up by snow shovels being thrown into a barrel. But again, that could have been a cell phone return recycle drive or what have you, right? Could have been like that, one of those one-time offers, bring your phone in for recycling and get $20 or $5 or whatever, right? And millions of people showed up at once. So there's that. But still, the 21 million phones going dark, that's actually documented, and that has data to back it up. But there's no data to back up the video. So the video you can take with a grain of salt.
Oh, I remember something I wanted to circle back to about the energy. I think last week or a week before, I told you that I realized I'd been feeling fear like I hadn't felt in years, almost decades. And then after a couple of days of that, I realized that it wasn't mine, or wasn't all mine. It was theirs mostly. And then it took me another week or two and another meltdown. I'll be honest, I had one of the worst meltdowns of my life last week. And then after that, I realized, okay, all the other negative emotions I'm feeling, like frustration and like, whatever, most of that isn't going to be, may not be mine either. Because if stuff's happening like we're suspecting, it's, there's a bunch of people at the top who are feeling very bad right now. They're feeling a lot of negative emotions. Let's say they're being frustrated and they're probably afraid. So that's going to
Yeah,
spill over.
it's going to spill over, but it's also the frequency of the Schumann resonance too.
Mm-hmm.
And the resonance fluctuates all the time. So when the resonance hits into a certain frequency, all the emotions that are on the planet begin to synchronize with
Mm-hmm.
the people of the planet, and then they pass each other. But it could hover there for like maybe a day because things just move really, really slow. So, but they're always like passing each other. Sometimes we can pass it quickly, pass through quickly. Sometimes we pass through it slow. It all depends on how the frequency of the Schumann resonance is working. And this is all pretty much done by design, because you get the higher frequencies, which is the frequencies of the higher beings, angels, for lack of a better description. And then you have, under that, you have our human frequency. And then under that, you have the general state of everybody's intention on the planet. That is always in flux. But then once in a while, all these things line up perfectly. And then it goes back out of whack. I've seen the Schumann resonance line up, like those three things line up, the angel frequency, the human frequency, and the intention frequencies all just line up. And then, man, those are good weeks when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then underneath all of that, the fourth layer, that is base instinct animal frequency. Okay. And we tune into basically the frequency above us, which is the angel frequency, and the frequency below us, which is our intention frequency, what we intend. So what Michael is actually doing is that he is getting, it's not necessarily that these lines have to touch, but it's a matter of having our intentions be higher on the frequency spectrum and getting us up there. And when our intentions push are higher, then that pushes the human frequency up higher to closer to the angel frequency. And so we're actually uplifting our own frequency with our own intentions. And the Schumann resonance, you can see it on the graph, proves what I am saying is correct. There you go. Love science. So that is, and the animal frequency pretty much stays where it's at. When it spikes up into, like, through our intentions and into the human frequency, that's usually an indication that the human species is in fear. So when we have base intentions, selfish intentions, this basically brings us closer to the animal frequencies. And that is just basically survival intentions is what it is. Because, I mean, animals have neither good nor bad intentions. They just survive. Mm-hmm. And so if our intention frequency begins to stay down at the animal level, we're just basically in survival mode all the time. And humans cannot survive like that because now we're too far from the angel frequency. And when that happens, the human frequency tends to want to pull up into the angel frequency, and then the intention is trying to pull it, intention frequency is trying to pull it down, something is going to happen. And that is pretty much what's going on this planet, is that it's the battle between our intentions and the angel frequency. And it's, and you can see, like, if you watch the Twitter handle, I think it's just Schumann resonance on Twitter. When you look at the graphs and you just see like everything's a mess, that basically shows that the secret war is in full swing, and things are going on the spiritual level. So we can actually watch the spiritual battle happening in real time by watching the Schumann frequency and paying attention to our own feelings and knowing the difference.
So those the folks who are into deliberately using, say, the law of attraction to add value to society, things like that, good for you, and keep up the good work.
Mm-hmm.
Keep at it, folks.
The law of attraction, the secret, is a good example why all of this knowledge had to be occultic. There's a good reason why, and it was a wise decision by our ancestors to keep this knowledge occultic. Because, I mean, even like at this point in time, we look back in the past and we're like, you know, why wouldn't they let everybody know that? Problem is that the secret works. You can either use it as with a Luciferian philosophy, which is service to self, or you can use it for a higher experience. And they were wise not to let humans know this until this time, because if we had known the secret way back in the past, it would have been used for selfish purposes, and all of that karma would be just coming right back around, and just, I mean, it would wipe out whole families is what it would. And they're probably, I mean, it would just devastate this planet, because what you put out there eventually has to come back home. I mean, every circuit that you'll ever set up in your life, regardless, always has to have a positive and negative. It always has to have a return wire. That is how energy works, is that it's always going to return back to where it began. I mean, just like our journey through the cosmos. I mean, our goal is to go back to paradise, to the Father, where we began. Everything began, including us. So, I mean, it's the goal, and we're energy. So we are energy wanting to go home. So there's no difference with the energy that you use and manipulate to serve yourself. If you use the law of attraction to get something for yourself, then ultimately somebody else had to lose something in order for you to gain. And so, and then the universe has to balance itself. So what that person lost has to be regained. And so it all goes around a big fat circle. Now, when you use the law of attraction to give and to put out the intention, well, it does something a little bit funny as it travels around the cosmos or around the planet and doing its work. It has to come back. It too has to come back to source. But instead of collecting all of this loss because of your earlier selfish gain, and then all of that loss, basically it's negative energy that has to be replenished. It has to be balanced, and it only can be balanced at source. I mean, we all watched The Matrix, didn't we? Neo was the balance. He had to go back to source in order to balance the equation so that the matrix could keep operating. But then, he pointed the middle finger and threw a huge wrench in the whole damn works. And the matrix had to evolve. So anyways, a little side thing. And the same thing happens with when you give off giving energy, because that energy is constantly giving, it's also collecting at the same time. And then by the time it has come back to you, it might be a depleted electron, but you expected that, didn't you? So there is no loss. But meanwhile, all that giving that it did had produced more giving from the receiving of that giving. And so it created several little eddies of energy currents are breaking off from that, and all of those energy currents are sharing the same intention as the parent energy, and it's reverse for negative. All energy will share when energy splits off. It shares some of its parent traits, just like any offspring. Man, that shit's complicated. And oh yeah, finish off the India thing. Well, then you have a little chat with someone from India, and you say, "Hey, what's going on?" And they will tell you that is coming from one of the poorest province in India. And they will tell you that the government is constantly screwing these poor people over. And they have very little electricity, very little clean water, and they are being locked in their houses for COVID. And a lot of them are dying in their houses from heat exhaustion and lack of nutrition. And this is nothing new. This province apparently has been going through this off and on over the decades. It's like the Indian government just wants them gone and is willing to do anything to make sure that happens. And no different than any government in the world. They talk one game and do the exact opposite. That's nothing new in politics. So to me, that seems to be a pretty reasonable suggestion, considering that the photos are fake. They're from 2015, so that's a good, plausible story as any, at least more plausible than fake photos of fake victims. And what else was going on this week? That was weird. Oh, I had the other one in my head, but now it's gone. Ah, damn it. Anyways, so that's just
too bad there isn't something we can write down a list on and read it off when we're on the air. That would be wonderful if that were possible.
that would mean that I'd be actually organized. And I don't know. There's more surprises when you live dysfunctionally.
Okay.
So the other one was this one I really kind of laughed at. The Pentagon has promised to do US UFO disclosure by June, I think. And I'm just like, but they're only going to do 21st century disclosure. They're not going to touch the stuff from the 20th century. And there's good reasons for that, because, well, they didn't destroy as many lives in the 21st century as they did in the 20th century for people that claim to witness UFOs. So there's that. And so this will be their way of getting around any lawsuits or anything like that. And no doubt most of the people that were involved in any of the cover-ups that took place in the 20th century are either dead or long retired. And so I think they would like to take this opportunity to disclose UFOs, but they are doing it in such a way, or at least mainstream media is just going wild with this, and they're like pushing the narrative. Oh, what if they're dangerous, or what if they're planning an attack? And it's like, people, are you fucking stupid? These things, we've been seeing these things in our skies since the mid 20th century, for sure. For sure. You just, no argument. Yeah, maybe before, but we can definitively say from the 1960s forward that these things have been in our skies, and they have shut down nuclear warheads. These are documented facts, by the way. And they are going to go about convincing people that these things are a danger and that we have to prepare for an invasion. And it's like, people, they have had the high ground for over 50 years at least. If they wanted to attack us, they could have done it a long time ago. And in fact, it would have been a hell of a lot easier to do it 40 years ago than it would be to do it now. And so this is what they're going to push, that, these are dangerous craft.
Yeah. It's almost like the media doesn't have anything legitimate to talk about. The instant they couldn't hammer us with COVID, they went right back to climate change or environmental whatever the hell they want to call it now. But they started doubling up on. Well, they didn't even back off of COVID. They just started putting this on top of it or with it at the same time. I have a digital subscription to the National Geographic, and I get like a weekly email, and sometimes I get like a daily email, and I just skim through it, and I'm like, okay, who do they think won't see through this?
And here's the thing.
The headlines, like, oh my goodness.
And here's the thing. Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, they already recorded CNN admitting as much. It's like, yeah, this COVID thing is starting to peter out. We think we're going to possibly move to the environmental thing again. But he is like, it's on camera. It's on camera.
Mm-hmm.
There's no there's no denying it. CNN hasn't denied it. So it's like, these are propagandists. These aren't news networks. They are propagandist networks. It's like, if you want news, Max News, hell, even Fox, for Jesus' sake, OAN, Jordan Sather, I like him. Edge of Wonder, I think they still have I think they got a channel on Rumble still. Plus they have their own website. And find that on Rumble. X22 is pretty good, but you take him with a grain of salt too. But I find him interesting nonetheless.
And NTD, are they still broadcasting?
NTD, they do some funny things sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah. The thing you always got to bear in mind when dealing with the enemy, you say, this is like, always pissed me off in church. They would preach about the enemy and what the enemy can do and and can't do, or mostly what the enemy can do. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, there's no practical advice. no practical knowledge of what you can do to defend yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's like the best way to defend yourself is through understanding. Once you understand how a thing works, then the thing becomes, I don't know, passive now. I mean, it can't harm you. I mean, if you know that a skill saw is dangerous, well, then you're probably going to keep your hands on the side of the blade, on, the side of the machine that you should keep it on. Yeah, you pay attention. So when you understand how a thing works, you pay attention a little bit more, depending on the level of, caution that you have to perform. So the thing is about the enemies, one thing to understand is, and this is how they get away with their bullshit. They have to, for every lie that they tell us, they have to give us 3 truths. Universal law. They must give us 3 truths. Now, they can get away with half-truths, which sort of kind of cancels out the truth, but also cancels out the lie at the same time. They're really good at that. They're really good at that because they don't want to have to tell us 3 truths, right? So they avoid blatant lies. But then when they do a blatant lie, I'll tell you, you watch it. Like now that I've told you what to look for, watch the news sometimes. When they are doing like half-truths, the show goes along fairly smoothly. Everybody's doing their part, doing their part in the bullshit. But when they have to come out with a blatant lie and just pound this big pile of bullshit right on your lap, they watch the rest of the show and you'll see the other 3 truths come through. And if you're really good with discernment, you'll feel the truth in here.
Yep.
Learn to love truth, and you'll know it. You'll recognize the feeling of truth. It's like,
Absolutely.
yeah.
The kicker for me for a long time was, when you're talking about for every lie they tell, they have to tell 3 truths. The kicker was they're not required to label the lies and the truths and things. It's like, so hence the gift of discernment. We have to develop, we have to figure out for ourselves, and that's probably another universal law is we have to, it's part of our education. If there were no lies, we wouldn't know what the truth was or something like that.
Something like that. Hey, free will. In God's universe, free will is absolute. So you can't fuck with people's free will. This is why they can't get away with too many lies, because it fucks with your free will. So thus the reason for the 1 lie, 3 truths rule. I'm not sure if that's Michael's rule or the father's rule. It's probably Michael's rule, because that doesn't seem like something that the father would trouble himself with. Let's put it that way. So okay. I think that's Michael's thing, which is pretty cool. That means that he had to that was set up billions and billions of years ago. That's thinking ahead. But I suppose if you're a god, you got to think ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting now that you said that to think about the differences. The Father had the template for all the universes, and then the sons got to probably had very broad latitude within that template to set up their own things. Basically, it's like would it be like a not a blank canvas, but a canvas with let's say either the same 5 random curved lines on it, or just even random curved lines on it, and then okay, so there you go, and you have to incorporate these curved lines, but otherwise it's up to you, and you you tell 1,000 artists, you give 1,000 of these to 1,000 different artists, and just look at the results. You're
Yeah,
going to
exactly.
see
I mean,
some really interesting stuff they come up with, given the same simple rules,
yep.
and
It's
then given
like
free reign with the rest of it.
it's like Michael chose the pentagon as his shape for intelligent life in this universe.
Hmm.
So all intelligent life in this universe is going to be a pentagonal sort of representation or variety on a theme.
Hmm.
So imagine other shapes. And then also got to remember there's a billion worlds in Havana. The creator's sons traversed those billion worlds as part of their education. And somewheres along the line in Michael's education through Havana, he fell in love with that pentagon shape. And so much so that he was like, I am going to create a universe based on this shape. You see how the enemy has twisted Michael's dream, intention of his universe? You understand now what the enemy has done by making us shun the pentagram? By making us shun the pentagram as evil, we are actually denying ourselves and our godhood. Wow. Eh? Just it's all the little things over thousands of years that have fucked us. It's like that's the thing to understand. I mean, we're kind of fortunate this time because the enemy has really only had about 500 years to prepare. Because you got to remember, we're dealing with a new batch of demons, for lack of a better description. They're higher dimensional beings, is what they are, and they're created by they share the same creator as us. So technically, they're our brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm.
Let that one marinate for a minute. So, I mean, shouldn't really, be hating on family. And, or even be scared of family. And so they've only had like 500 years to prepare. And there is something coming. There is an end game. It's this actually came up in conversation this week. Actually, I keep asking the same. Why are they in such a freaking hurry? Why are they in a hurry? Just answer that one question. Why are they in a hurry? Just meditate on that. It's like, okay, they want everybody to take the vaccines, but there is no risk reward system. Why? Why is there no risk reward system for taking the vaccine? I mean, shouldn't you, like, once you take the vaccine, shouldn't you be able to unmask? Shouldn't you be able to, like, not have to social distance anymore? Shouldn't you be free and free from fear? Right? You're vaccinated. You're inoculated against it. It can't affect you. Oh, there's variants. Variants again share the parents characteristics, so the vaccination should work, and apparently this new type of vaccination should work better because it doesn't actually create an immune response. It actually upgrades your DNA to a certain extent.
By the classic game that you'd expect them to play, they'd say, okay, you can do this, but you have to you wear a instead of wearing a yellow star around your neck, you wear one of those green "I got vaccinated" things around your neck, and then you can do all the stuff you did before COVID. They're not even doing that. They're just pushing the fear narrative. Take the vaccine, and you have to do the same, pretty much the same. I've seen things are a little bit different, but there's no, like, you don't even have to show documentation that you're vaccinated or something. Maybe you do, but it's a little, yeah. To agree with your statement, yeah, it's a little bit strange. I'm not recognizing the playbook here.
Yeah, like I said, where's the risk-reward factor? There is none, and it's just like, and so you got to ask yourself, why isn't there? Well, again, it's universal law, free will.
Mm-hmm.
If it was a risk-reward system, there is no free will, because you're getting something for something. You know what I mean? It's like, it's more like it's not free will, it's more like barter. And so people will base their decision on what they can gain personally more than, more than whether or not it's good for them or not. You see what I mean? The difference? Yeah. It's almost subtle, but it's there. And so that would be in violation of free will. So you got to ask yourself, it's like, well, they got all these lockdowns and everything going on. Since when do they give a shit about free will? Again, follow that reasoning for a little while. It will take you to a very strange place. So if they're all of a sudden concerned about free will, then the next thing to follow is, why are they concerned with our free will all of a sudden? I mean, if that doesn't make you suspicious, I don't know what will. I mean, a clever person would use the carrot trick, right? But they can't use the carrot trick, so there's no enticing. So what's really going on? You got to ask yourself, what's really going on? I mean, I got my own thoughts. I mean, I personally think that this whole vaccination thing is setting up a narrative, a cover story for something else. Oh, what possible event could take place that you would need at least 50% of the population to be involved in? What the fuck? Well, now your options really begin to narrow. And quite frankly, maybe in my limited knowledgeable way, I bring it down to two scenarios. We're either looking at the setup to set up the narrative for Project Bluebeam. And Project Bluebeam is a paper that was written by the military describing or outlining staging a fake extraterrestrial attack on the planet, planet-wide attack. And so it's either coming down to Project Bluebeam, or it's coming down to rapture. It's like, if what the prophets say is true, that everybody just disappears that have been judged, I don't, either way, I mean, I have my own thoughts on that. I mean, I know that traditionally everybody believes that all the good people be swept up and taken off the planet. I believe the exact opposite is going to happen,
Mm.
you know, because it makes more sense to keep the good people here, to keep evolving spiritually and keep developing, which is ultimately the goal. I mean, why do you create something if not, you know, what, to cut the experiment off midstream? You know, the universe doesn't work like that. So, yeah, no, the experiment continues, and it'll continue for probably, and well, it'll continue indefinitely. I mean, once a planet goes into light and life, it's really no longer a planet. It's a living extra dimensional being now.
Mm. Mm.
And once the planet has made that shift, it doesn't exist in time and space anymore. It exists in the real. It exists where Michael exists. What do you think the point of all of this is? Michael wants his children home. Don't you get it? He wants his children home. And the only way that his children can come home is when they are ready to. There's no other way to describe it. Think of the parable of the son, the prodigal son.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
think about that. I mean, he told that whole story. The son came home when he was ready to. Michael's children will come home as they are ready, and they come home in planets, or maybe even solar systems. Maybe the whole solar system has to be brought into light and life. I mean, there is like this membrane around our solar system. It it's almost like a membrane of a cell.
Mm.
What the hell, right? They say
Yeah, they
Voyager went
talked
through
about.
it.
Yeah, I was just going to say that they call it the heliopause, where the solar wind from our sun becomes indistinguishable, and there's kind of some spikes and stuff in it. But maybe I think there may be something else going on out there that Voyager's instruments aren't detecting.
I remember reading early on, they did actually publish that it was like they described it as the skin of our solar system.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so it was like, oh, because that struck me. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
some things that you read, they just strike you and stick with you. But yeah, um, so that is almost like, so perhaps the goal is to take the whole solar system into light and life. And that's what we will probably do. And it just, but I mean, our solar system is a junkyard. It's a graveyard. Sorry. It really is a graveyard. I mean, what happened in this solar system because of the rebellion and all those material children coming here? It's like they just basically raped the environment. And I'm not just talking about this one planet. They raped the environment on every planet that they could in this solar system. Like, they just didn't give a shit. And there was a price to be paid for that. That's why Michael did nothing. That's why, for 150,000 years, because Michael knew that there's a price to pay for this evil. And I mean, how many times did the Son of Man say that evil always
Is
carries the
sown.
seeds?
It's
No,
sown
evil.
with the seeds of its own destruction.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Mm-hmm.
And so Michael knew what was going to happen, and it
Sounds
happened.
like evil is almost designed to be unsustainable. If it
It's
could have been designed, I don't know whether it was designed or not, or if it's incidental to the rest of the creation, but it is inherently unsustainable, let's say.
evil is the result of a evil is a result of an equation that cannot resolve itself.
Mm.
I mean, in the Matrix, like the buddy in the white suit, he said it correct. He was telling the truth, but just add evil onto that. It's like evil is basically the mathematical equation of the universe that cannot resolve itself. All other equations can resolve themselves, meaning no matter what side you put the variables, no matter what side of the equal sign you put the variables, the equation will always resolve. Okay, so that's a perfect equation. Then you have other equations that you cannot move one variable without another variable, and so it cannot resolve itself, no matter how far you break it down. This was Lucifer's folly. I mean, somebody had to end up with that variable, and it happened to be Lucifer, and other beings had a variation of this unsolvable equation within their makeup, and mostly among the material sons and the material daughters. And so the Melchizedeks recognized this in Lucifer, and they made a note of it. But that was it, because they didn't feel that it was their purpose to report this across the public airwaves.
Mm.
So they recorded it, and that record stayed on the Melchizedek's home world in this universe. And so it wasn't until after the rebellion broke out that an investigation was done, and then this was revealed. The Norlandidak fathers observed the same thing, but again, they put it in the record, but it wasn't made public. The record was found out after the rebellion. It's just like, oh, okay. So all the signs were there, but being like nobody was willing to invade. Well, it wouldn't have been right to invade into Lucifer's privacy like that. It just wouldn't be. Not in any cooperative universe. That would just be disgusting. Just like, that's like telling a secret about somebody. You just don't do that shit, right? And so they did the right thing by just making it a matter of record, but not broadcasting it. So when the Nerlandadak fathers observed it, it didn't leave Nerlandadak. When the Melchizedeks observed it, it didn't leave their home world either. So it was just in the library, forgotten about until it finally resulted in Lucifer starting his rebellion. And it's like, sometimes I wonder where the hell his head was, but I think what it was is that he knew everything. He knew everything, and he understood everything, but he could not understand the Father.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, like, God. And the thing is that I don't think Landadocs make the journey to paradise. They stay in this universe. So there wasn't really any dire need for Lucifer to understand the Father, but it was something that he obsessed over. And because he obsessed over it, and he kept on grilling the Finilators about the Father, well, the problem with that was the Finilators could never give him a satisfactory answer, because there was no satisfactory answer. Because when the Finilators describe God, they're describing the experience of God. Because there is no describing God. You can only describe the experience of God. This is true for all levels of being, in all universes. And that is where that poor bastard struggled. I mean, I feel sorry for him more than anything, because he just couldn't get his head around it.
Yeah, so I was thinking from your description or what you were talking about. I'm not sure quite how I want to ask this, but to what degree was it he had something in the equation? If you run a matrix of variables, you come out with a whole bunch of different combinations, and Lucifer was the one that had the short straw about this particular thing, I guess. It was somehow, we all know that one person who is obsessed with such and such a thing, and almost like it's a part of their core program. They couldn't not be obsessed about it. They couldn't, at the time, over time, like years, it might be attenuated, or it might be finally kicked out of their system, but sometimes not. So I'm thinking that it was for lack of a better word, a programming fault, or it was something that was, he drew the short straw as far as that was.
Well, I guess it depends on how you look at it, because, I mean, Michael is never going to let Lucifer be forgotten. And this is the other thing people need to understand. Lucifer was Michael's son. Yeah. I mean, Michael lost a son. You got to think of it from Michael's point of view. I mean, yeah, we have our stories about Lucifer and Satan and everything like that, but it's like, when you look at it from Michael's point of view, he lost a son. And people like, why does he let Lucifer, or Satan roam so long? Because these are his children, both Satan and Lucifer. They are his sons. And like any father, he doesn't want to have to kill his son. And, and he did his best to try to talk some sense into Lucifer, but Lucifer wouldn't have it, and started accusing Michael of, horrific things, and, his father, essentially. And so, to the, just to the point where it just turned into a shit show. But Michael had no desire to destroy his son. I mean, he locked him up in in a cage orbiting the father's planet in this sector in Saturnalia, and in hopes that, with time, being like near the father's energy, that Lucifer would come to understand the eternal father within himself. But Lucifer couldn't do that. And then just slowly, he just faded out of existence. It was probably a very sad day for Michael when his son, Lucifer, finally just ceased existing, just stopped existing. And you know, I have no doubt that he mourned his passing like any father would.
Mm-hmm.
Just so, you know, feel sorry for your brother, but you don't give him a chance to fuck you over either.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
you can feel sorry for someone, but at the same time, you can be on guard for that person as well. It's, you know, it's like feeling bad for a wolf who got his paw caught in a trap. You want to help the wolf, but you're not willing to get bit for it either. So precautions.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you figure it out. And yeah, but that's basically how you deal with these demons too. I guess that's maybe why they don't like being near me, is because I don't fear them. I feel sorry for them
Mm.
because I understand that we share the same creator. Michael created both of us. And so we share the same parent. So it's like, I feel bad for them. It's like, shit, man, I could be that stupid. Thank fuck I'm not. And, you know, so, you know, I feel bad for them, and they seem to not want to be around that kind of genuine energy, because feeling bad for them means that I love them because they're family. But it's like, oh, man, you're just making one stupid decision after another. I don't know what to tell you. It's like, you have a chance to, you know, to turn this shit show around. You might end up spending eternity on the Father's planet, but, you know, what else you got? I mean, you're just sucking on human souls in order to just stay just barely alive, barely existing. I mean, that's how they survive. They survive off of our loosh.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all it is, though. It's just survival. It's not living. So they're always making plans to create more loosh. This is why evil carries the seeds of its own destruction, because they're constantly chasing more energy, constantly chasing it. But when you live in truth, you're just bathing in the energy that is just freely available everywhere because of Michael's mercy. It's as simple as that. It's just there. But if you want to deny truth and live in, you know, bullshit, then that energy can't associate itself with you. It's just you create a barrier around you that won't allow it to come through. Oh yeah, I was told by a guy. He's a minister. He says that I've got like this thick black aura around me and this thin white aura close to my surface. I'm like, that's crazy. Well, here's the thing about black. Black is all the colors mixed together. So basically, it absorbs all energy waves.
Mm.
Yeah, now you're learning something. Oh, black is evil. What? No, let's look at the science. What do we know about the color of black? Well, we know that in the color of black absorbs all light because it's absorbing all the energy around it. And here's another little fun fact about black. All that energy that it absorbs, it will also it will repel heat, or it radiates the heat. This so the heat is always coming off of the color black. It doesn't absorb the heat. This is why the petroleum containers are painted black.
Hmm.
You see them on the railroad, and you know, going high in the cross, boom, boom. Canada's pipeline, people. Hoo, hoo. You know, it's nothing but the world best for us, safest thing ever. Yeah, I'm being facetious, anyways, or sarcastic. So yeah, black railroad cars would they are constantly giving off the heat from the sun that is shining down on it, but they're absorbing all the other energies. And as the train moves down the track, that heat is being moved away from the car into the environment, and then more heat is being pushed off. So that's how they keep the cars cool, so that the petroleum stays stiff, so that when they're going down the track, the petroleum doesn't slosh as much. That's why they do it. The spy plane, Blackbird, it was painted completely black. The number one reason why these stealth bombers are painted black is because black will give off the heat. It radiates heat very, very quickly, so they paint them black, and as they move through the air, they're actually cooling down because they're removing the heat so fast. And the blacker the black, this is why these supersonic jets are just like this flat black, as black as black can be. It's not for any stealth reasons, because I mean that kind of stealth only works at night. It doesn't work so well in the daytime. It's basically it's a big black dot against a blue sky. And you know, when you know spy agencies or you know defense countries defense posts are looking through their telescopes or scanners or what have you, on a clear day, that's just a big black dot in the sky. So yeah, it's not for stealth reasons. It's for heat reasons, to get rid of the heat as fast as they can. So that's what black is. So this notion that black is evil, it came somewheres out of the fucking Middle Ages. So take it for what it is. The Egyptians considered black the color of life. But they had good reason to, because the soil around the Nile is black, and it grew plants and gave them life. So yeah, for them, it was the color of life.
Okay. I was going to talk about, I guess, yeah, what would happen, what will happen with, I think you said that Lucifer has now been adjudicated. In the Urantia book, it said he was incarcerated and was scheduled to be adjudicated, and now I think you said he is. And I think what we suspect has happened to them is, his personality as a discrete individual has been extinguished, but the, what do I want to say, his essence, the information that basically the good parts of him for sure will be, you know, archived, and pretty much everything to do with him would be, you know, archived into the universal records and things like that, I guess.
You're probably correct. Because he's such a because he is the figure that he was, I imagine that everything has been put in the universal record so that nothing is left out, which, you know, basically total transparency. So that I think that will keep anybody from accusing Michael of being unfair with Lucifer, because that always seemed to be Michael's concern. So every being that Michael has created has their own free will, and it seems that they have the free will to actually judge their own creator, their father. So, wow. So yeah, there's
so
that.
Where was I gonna? Oh yeah. So, and I've got a segue into a sort of a current current or recently current event. That, yeah, so people can look at Lucifer's record or saying it's basically like a, well, let's say like an interactive statue of let's say Jefferson Davis or something. You can find out what he was all about, why he did the things he did, some of the good things he did, some of the bad things he did, and what the judgment was about him. And so like, okay, maybe he did these things which were okay, and here's some other stuff like, okay, I don't want to ever do that. Here's how not to be.
Yeah.
And then so we're talking about the whatever BLM or whoever wants to take, they want to tear down all the statues of, I don't know about Lincoln, but Jefferson Davis and some certain people. The reason I don't think that's a good idea is people need to see our entire history and say, thank goodness I'm making different choices than some of these people did.
You know what I just thought of? Michael found the solution for the unsolvable equation. What it is that he's created a patch, almost like a programming patch that will allow
update, yeah.
It will allow a bridge so that the equation will resolve. And so it's almost like taking out an equal sign and putting something else in its place. But it's something that Michael created. So Michael had to create this. This was not something that, this was not a ready-made program he could take off the shelf. He had to create this.
He had to write. Wow.
Yeah, he had to create it. He basically had to write this software. And it took about 200,000 years. Let that one sink in.
Wow. Michael's universal software patch. I'm going to write that.
And it will act as a patch for evil in the future, because if any other being is created with this mathematical defect, they will have history to look on and be like, oh shit, this has already been done, or this was the result of this type of thinking. And maybe that person or that personality will find a clever way to resolve the equation within himself. And that would be a new aspect of the universe. And a new aspect for God the Supreme.
Okay.
Yes.
Because didn't it say there were either unrevealed or even unallocated aspects? It had say there was a total of 7 places, but only 5 were filled. I'm just pulling numbers out of thin air, but I recall the Urantia book saying that they hadn't all been allocated for God the Supreme, or one of these aspects of God. They were, we're still in the embryonic universe phase. We have, what do we have? We have paradise, we have the central universe, then we have one ring of 7 super universes. And that's all that's been kind of, not even settled, but all that's being settled now. The rest, there's, I think, 3 other outer levels that are being constructed and thought about and considered. There's a master plan that has about 5 rings. We have like 1 or 2 out of a total of, say, 5. It's called the Master Universe.
Yeah, one of 7 other grand universes.
7 total rings.
Yeah,
including
7.
Paradise, I think.
Paradise is in the center, so we got Paradise in the center, which never moves. Then we have Havana and its billion worlds, and it's a universe unto itself, and it surrounds Paradise. Then outside of Havana, that's when the rings begin.
Yeah.
And you end up with the 7 grand universes. And then inside of those 7 grand universes, there are at least 123,000 universes
Yeah.
in each one, at least.
Local universes.
Local universes.
Which we call, I say, you know, like, for a long time I thought, I called it a local universe. I envisioned it as, say, this galaxy, but I think it's actually, it's at least a group of galaxies, maybe more than that. I don't know exactly how big they are, but there's
at least,
yeah.
We know that there's at least 10 million galaxies.
Mm-hmm.
There can't be any less than 10. There's 10 million galaxies for sure. And then there may be extra galaxies for intelligent, spirit-fused beings.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure. But the Urantia book tells us that there are 10 million intelligent life forms in the universe. And it is I postulate that each intelligent life form occupies a galaxy. And those intelligent life forms are meant to go out into that galaxy and bring that galaxy into light and life. And each intelligent being there's a seed planet in each galaxy. In this galaxy, it just so happens that the seed planet is this planet, Earth. And the seed galaxy is meant to first bring the solar system into light and life, then go out into the galaxy and bring the galaxy into light and life. And then I'm not sure after that whether or not the process continues into other galaxies. But I do see that when all the galaxies are in light and life, we go closer into Michael's realm until finally we are enveloped into the real universe. See, this is time and space. Then once we have evolved, this whole universe or this whole galaxy and this whole sector has evolved, we begin the process of moving in. This is like forever down the road. I mean, because half of the galaxies, I mean, this sector alone still isn't even finished.
So let me ask you, because I'm curious now about the actual size of what's called a local universe. You said 10 million galaxies. Is that a local universe?
I'm pretty sure that's a local universe.
Super universe?
No, that's a local universe.
That's a local universe.
10
okay, so it's like
million.
100,000th of a super universe, and there's 7 of those orbiting the central universe. Space is big, folks.
Shit.
I bet you wrap my head around that.
I bet you that there's probably some kind of sacred geometry in there somewheres too. I imagine. But yeah,
it's laid out. It's laid out in the book how much. How does it go? There's a planet, and then a constellation, a system, of this or that, whatever the things that compose a local universe, and then how many are in a minor sector, major sector, that are in the super universe. And I would have to go through it and like write it all down and then think about it for a while. I don't usually grasp numbers right away, but
what's blowing my mind is that if all these UFOs that come and go on our planet are other intelligent beings on other worlds, those worlds are in another galaxy. And that's like, holy shit. These fuckers are traveling across time and space. And so, yeah, they're doing something. The other option on the table for UFOs is that the moon is a base, and that's where they all come from. and that base has been up there forever. And that base is occupied by humans, but humans that have been up there since the times of the Anunnaki, for lack of a better word, but times of the material children that occupied this planet. So they've been up there a long, long fucking time. And they've been watching this world. If that's the case, then again, they have made no aggressive move against us. I mean, unless the moves that they're making against us are on a supernatural level and we wouldn't understand what they were doing. I mean, maybe the weapons that they use against us are energy weapons. Maybe maybe what David Icke says is true. The moon is a weapon designed to dullen our minds. But the moon showed up as a result of Tiamat being destroyed. So we needed the moon in order to balance our tides. And if we didn't have the moon to pull our tides, this world would have stagnated and died a long time ago. You see, before Tiamat was destroyed, Tiamat had enough gravitational influence over this planet that it created the tides at that time. And the highest tides is when Mars and Earth and Tiamat were lined up. And then we would get the highest tides. And so this was the original design of this solar system. And then boom, Tiamat's gone. Mars ends up in this wacky orbit. I mean, it was already going around with Tiamat, so it had the momentum of going around the sun. But it had to find its Lagrange point. And it's found its Lagrange point, but it still wobbles in its track. And because of that wobble, once in a while, Mars actually ends up behind us in its orbit. How crazy is that? So this is how, I mean, scientists already admit that it seems like Mars started its life out orbiting a larger planet. And I like this one. Moons are the children of the planets. So all the moons that are around Jupiter as a planet actually gave birth to those moons.
Okay.
And how a planet gives birth is usually out one of its poles, north or south. And Jupiter spit out a lot of moons. Mars was the offspring of Tiamat. Tiamat, from no doubt, would have produced more planets later. And if we actually had a proper history, then we would begin to realize that all these stories in the past about Zeus and Neptune, Jupiter, Mars, all of these stories, they're actually talking about the birth of our solar system. Except they have been so screwed up over the centuries that they're barely recognizable as a story about our solar system. But one clever guy, and I don't even think he even knew what he stumbled on. I mean, Jordan Rivers, he has a channel called Spirit Science. They're fun little clips. And he did a series and about these gods, these early gods in our that supposedly created our solar system. And I had to chuckle because it was, if you looked at it from the point of view that I just expressed, you begin to see that these planets gave birth to these moons or these gods, which in ancient, gods merely means, gods with an S, means flyers of the sky, which could mean the planets. So when he did this like series, I forget what the name of it was, it's like he basically described the early solar system, which so happened to be almost the same description of a science paper. I forget the guy's name, but Electric Universe. And he and what he described in his Electric Universe theory sort of kind of almost matched up with the story, this early old Babylonian story that this Jordan Rivers did a cartoon on. It was like, holy shit, it's the same story almost, except you just kind of apply the science, replace everything, and you're just like, wow. And yeah, the electric universe theory, it makes way more sense than Einstein's theory of relativity. Like it fills in a lot of gaps that Einstein couldn't fill. And same thing with Nissim Hiram and his theory. Oh man, just he's able to break the universe, like his equations break the universe down to information. I mean, his work, like he's got the universe figured out. And the equations that he uses are simple. He's actually using basic physics and calculus, and he found the calculation for the universe. He figured out the universe. It's amazing, and it started out so simple for him. He basically asked a very simple question. We know, okay, there's the smallest measurement that we can make in science is called the Planck length. Now, the Planck length also consists of a mass, and mass has energy. So we know that the Planck length is mass and its energy. So he took the mass of the Planck length, which is some variable that's like 0.0000000 something. It's very, very small. But its length is also very, very small. And he turned around and he was like, well, what would happen? So we know the Planck length is everywhere. It's in everything, okay? So he's like, okay. It's like, let me take this Planck length and let me fill 1 cubic centimeter. He says, let's calculate it. So he calculated out the Planck lengths that would exist in a square centimeter of air, essentially. The number he came up with blew his mind. It's like 1.69 by 10 to the 63rd power for energy. And he was like, that can't be right. We got this crazy large number that shouldn't even exist. And he's calculating that that is how much energy is in a square centimeter of air. That's 0-point energy, people. It's like, what the hell? And then he did some more calculations. And then he developed a mathematical formula. And then he started testing that mathematical formula against known properties of the universe. Things that we know from experiments to be fact. Like, I think like the size of an atom or something like that. We calculate it, but we can't calculate it precisely. We can only come within a few decimal places. And I think 4 decimal places is an acceptable measurement. And we keep trying to fine tune that measurement all the time. This is why the metric system has like a ISO S 2000 or an ISO S 2012 or what have you, right? It's because we've learned to measure things better. So we apply this to the speed of light too. And the speed of light is actually the basis for how we start our measurement. The amount of time that it takes for light to go a certain distance, in this case 1 meter, which is like this really small second, but that is our base measurement for time. And then we build everything up to seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, all from that one little piece of time. Anyways, so there's a precise way to measure things, and we measured things and we know what they are. Hiram, he applied his equation to I think it was to the mass of an atom, and his equation brought it within 2 decimal points of accuracy. He took that to some scientists, and they're like, that's impossible. And you're like, okay, let me know what you come up with. So a new round of testing was scheduled. So they set up their measuring instruments. Like, it takes them like years in between testing. This is why sometimes you see 10 years between iOS iterations in the metric system. Sometimes 5. So anyways, it just so happened that they were only like a year or 2 away from doing this measurement after setting up for so many years. And so they're going to do another measurement of the atom. And so they all hands on deck, they do the measurement of the atom, and shit me drawers, their accuracy came right into what Nissim Hiram had calculated the year before using his simple equations. And they were just like, oh. But they still didn't like what his equation said about the universe, so they didn't want to talk to him. So he applied his equation to a black hole. Well, shit me drawers. He found the equations for black holes. Put them against what we know about black holes, and his equations worked. Scientists were like, oh, that's interesting. But they still didn't want anything to do with them. Now he's in Hawaii trying to develop anti-grav technology or zero-point energy. That's what he's doing in Hawaii right now, and teaching on the side. Don't know how much success he's had. He's been at this shit for like 12 years now, I think. So I could tell you some interesting stories that guy's had because I followed his work. One interesting story was that Michael Tillinger, a archaeologist, South American archaeologist, was bringing this stone over to Hawaii. This is a story that he tells. So they were bringing this stone over to Hawaii, and what this stone is simply, it's a donut, essentially. It's a toroidal field, but it's essentially, it looks like a donut. And he just had a small one. Just a small one, about maybe 10 inches. And when he took this through security in Hawaii, apparently it blew out the circuitry in their security machines. They brought him to the back, and his bag was sitting in the middle of the floor, and nobody wanted to go near it. And they were like, we're going to need you to open your bag, sir. And he was like, is there a problem? Sir, please just open your bag. And he's like, okay. And so he did. And they all peeked in, expecting something crazy. And it was a donut-shaped rock. Lucky for Michael Tillinger, it just so happened that one of the security guards at that was on shift at that airport was a South American native who had immigrated to Hawaii. And he was like, "Oh, I know what that is." And he said the name of it. He said they're all over South Africa. And Mike Tillinger, just wanting to get out of there, yeah, that's what it is. So anyways, they took that to Liam Neeson's lab, and haven't heard too much about what happened with those experiments. So it would be interesting to see the follow-up of that work, but that was like 7-8 years ago that incident happened. And so, yeah, who knows where they're at. Maybe they discovered something and realized that, holy shit. Because I don't think we're allowed off this planet until we have fully integrated the spirit of truth and the spirit of discernment. I think we might be allowed to play in our solar system, but unfortunately, with all the destruction that happened in our solar system, it's made it very difficult to travel in this solar system because all the energy lines have been destroyed. Can you imagine at one time we used to have a Stargate that went from Earth to Mars, regular traffic all the time, just like nothing. And when shit went sideways, all of that stuff gets destroyed. And we look at it now, these big, huge megalithic monuments, and we look at it now and we scratch our head. What the hell was this for? Use your imagination a little bit. You see water channels. Moving water creates energy. Put something else in there. Anything moving creates energy. It's just, it's just a matter of how much energy you want to put in and how much energy you're going to get out. You find that balance. You don't want, it'd be nice to, get lots, put in little energy and get lots out. But unfortunately, we're at the stage in our evolution that we don't have that option. The best we can do with energy right now is that we can break even. That's the best we can do with energy. And so we can get the same amount out that we put in. And generally we don't achieve that. We're still working on stuff like that.
Fusion reactors are maybe coming up over the horizon. I don't know. I keep hearing they're working on them for about the last 30 years, but I don't know what's going on with them. The technology exists for something even better than fusion reactors. It's like we could have built nuclear reactors back in the 60s that would never melt down. And disposal of the rods at the end of it was just basically let them solidify in their own juice. And that would have been, basically solidifying them in rock salt. And it would have took care of itself. But that technology was black-bagged a long time ago, back in the early 70s. And I guess we weren't allowed to have nice things. That's basically... Let me guess, around 1973, the oil crisis?
Yeah, right about around there. And I'll tell you, the Russians rediscovered this technology. And they are starting to use it in their nuclear reactors. But, 2 years ago, it was still in the development stage. They were taking a different approach. They wanted to create a new type of nuclear reactor, and with this, using rock salt as a coolant agent would have allowed them more leeways in the parameters of how to build this nuclear reactor, and what they wanted to build was they wanted to build it in such a way that it actually looked like a toroidal field. They wanted the rock salt to swirl in such a way around the nuclear core to create more momentum, angular momentum in the liquid, so that if it would be harder for it to solidify. And so they were, last I seen that is what they were, that's where they were at on that. So I don't know how far that technology has come, but that would be pretty cool technology. And who knows, maybe in the future we'll have something different. It'd be nice, but they don't want us energy independent. Energy independent means freedom, lack of control.
Yep.
You get rid of the control element, then that leaves people free to do the right thing. Like right now, I think a lot of the planet is in a position where free energy would be more beneficial than destructive. I think like maybe 20 or 30 years ago, it would have been more destructive than beneficial, because it would have allowed bad people to hang out in caves for very, very long periods of time without refueling. But we are at a point with technology that you can't hide anywhere on the planet. I mean, I read on Twitter, people are like, oh, I'm leaving Canada. It's turned into a communist country. And I'm like, where do you plan on going? Nunavut? Let me know how that works out. It's like your shit freezes as it's coming out your asshole. Who wants that? It's like, man, it's like, so where are you going to go in the world now? I mean, globalism is everywhere. I mean, you want proof? Every country in the world is still wearing masks. It's like, where are you going to go? It's like, it's like they got us locked down with COVID. It's a fucking freak show is what it is. Like, I don't know how long they expect this shit to last. Really. I mean, you're trying to take people, especially Americans, who believe with their whole being and their whole existence that they are free men and women under the law. What do you do with that? I'll tell you, you can't do fuck all with that. Look at what's going on in Arizona. They thought that they had that whole thing, that whole election audit thing. They thought they had that in the bag. They stifled that off. Well, what's going on in Arizona right now? There's an election audit. Why? Because people in Arizona believe they are free. And they exert that freedom every day. And, isn't Arizona one of those open carry states?
I think so.
Yeah. So there you go. And so, yeah, they couldn't hold back the people. They wanted an audit. They got an audit. And you know what else is going on in Arizona, around that whole center where that audit's going on? People are coming and going all the time with their cameras, and they're videoing that shit. There's 12 cameras inside the building showing the whole process. Oh, and by the way, the Democrats say that it's not transparent enough. People are coming and going. People are watching, making sure that it's done properly. The cyber ninjas, they've been properly vetted to do the job. And then, nice little bonus cherry on the cake, they brought in this other guy. And he was like, at the trial, I think in Georgia, and he was like, give me 3 days alone with these ballots. I'll scan every one of them, and I'll tell you which ones are bullshit and which ones are not. How's that for a deal? They took him up on it. He finished in less than 3 days. Millions of ballots scanned digitally, stored on his computer. Done. Copied and passed off to other members of his team. Done. You cannot erase a footprint like that even if you wanted to. It's done. It's over with. And what he will prove with these scanners is what he proved in Georgia. Some ballots were printed with a black box that comes, like those black blocks that come down the side of the ballot. Some of them were printed a couple of millimeters out of place. Well, what he discovered that. And he was like, with that block a few millimeters out of place, that's telling the computer to do something very different than what it would if it was over here. And he explained what the differences was. And he was like, and during the trial, it was fucking hilarious. There's this one legislator, he was being like super partisan, and Buddy just turned to him and he was like, listen, man. He's like, the math does not care about your politics. The math only cares about doing one thing, following through and executing its equation. What this is telling the computer is very different from what it would tell the computer over here than what it would there. And he explained it in such simple words, basically made Buddy look like an idiot, which is what he needed. So yeah, anyways, they're scanned. They're done. And apparently they're ahead of schedule on the auditing.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so what the hell's going to come out of that mess? And if you think nothing's going to come out of it, like I said, people in Arizona are coming and going to the outside of that stadium every day, walking around the building with their cameras, making sure there's no fuckery. And there's like, I guess, dozens and dozens of people there every day and night. People just are sitting in their cars. Cops them up. What are you doing? Watching the audit. Make sure there's no fuckery. Cops are like, okay, good night, Patriot. And they drive away. Every time. So that's what's going on in Arizona. Gotta love it. I mean,
Oops.
Yeah. So once Arizona's audit is complete and it's found out who the real winner is of the election, well, shit me drawers, that's going to cause a problem. Sorry, plugging in my phone. That's going to cause a problem with the results from the 2020 election. I have no idea what it's going to result in. Nobody does. But there's some unhappy people who want an audit. All I can say is that Arizona would probably trigger the other states to have their audit. New Hampshire is in the midst of starting its audit. They were going to start. They hired a company. The people got pissed off because they didn't like that company because they said that it was, it had too many associations with the Democratic Party and the people knew it. People were doing their research. Nice, eh? And so they got the state to cancel that contract and go with another company that is being vetted properly to do the audit. A company that is capable of doing it and has no partisan agenda. So that's happening in New England or New Hampshire. I don't know, one of them.
New Hampshire. New Hampshire is a New England state. New England is a region of the United States.
Okay.
New England, let's see. The United States has New England. Canada has New France. Vive la différence.
There is none. So that's going on there. And then there's Georgia. Man, Georgia's a shit show right now. The politicians are freaking out. They're trying to push legislation through to block any audit. The people aren't having it. All it's doing is just making it way worse. And these dumb cunts, they sent like almost 80 lawyers to Atlanta to block the audit. It's like, what? What do you have to hide? Why so scared? That's where the fear's coming from. It's coming from that. And it's also coming, don't forget, there's shit going on in Myanmar too. I mean, the army is, the army is arresting the deep state, one player at a time. They're not even going after the big people either, by the way. It's kind of funny what's going on in Myanmar. They're starting at the bottom.
Yeah.
And they're arresting all the did they learn something from Q, I wonder? Because that's how the plan is going over here. Take out the pawns. So they've been taking out the pawns over in Myanmar. Well, we all know what's going to happen as they go up the ladder. Somebody's going to rat out on somebody. It's inevitable. It's just, yeah, it's got to happen. So by the time they get to the top, those people at the top are just shitting themselves right now. They know what they've done, and they're coming for them, and it's slow and it's painful, just like Q said. The pain is going to be unbearable because, I mean, they put a fence around Washington, D.C. That in itself should be messed up. I mean, that is messed up. And why it's still up, that's even more messed up. Why is there still a fence around Washington, around the Capitol buildings in Washington, D.C.? Nobody's paying attention? It's like, wow. And then, and Trump plans on starting rallies either the end of May or 1st of June. That's just all that's gonna do is just throw more fucking marbles in the machine. Can you imagine that crazy shit? They want to try to keep lockdowns with a Trump rally in town? It ain't gonna happen. I mean, Trump supporters are gonna go out, masked or unmasked. They're not gonna care. It's like, holy shit, it's a Trump rally. I mean, you think the Trump rallies were crazy before? They're going to be out of this world. I see like oceans and oceans of people, not only in the stadiums, but outside in the streets. It's going to be fucked. And they're coming because they just want to feel his energy. You don't tell me that that's messed up. There's something going on there, buddy. There is something going on there. And it's like, just to be there, to feel his energy in person, that's nuts. That's more power than what Hitler had. Let us hope he wields it well.
Yes. Let me tell you, or you can kind of finish up with a. I'll tell you about a dream I had last night, and you can comment on it. Let's see. I was called in front of, or I went in front of a panel of, not a big one, 5 or 10 people maybe, of, I want to say, mid to high level American political types, and they didn't have the greatest respect for me. They were asking me various questions, and and I had to remind them that on my mother's side, our family is related to two past United States presidents and Webster of dictionary fame. And on my father's side, we had a powdered milk processing plant. If you've ever had the hot chocolate Swiss Miss, our family is the original producers of that. And I was telling him all this stuff. And that's about when I don't know what effect it had on them or what the result was or anything. But they were talking to me like I was nobody, and I had to kind of remind them what the heritage was there. And as I said, I don't know what result, but I thought that was interesting that I had that dream.
I think that that dream is going to be representative of what is going to probably really transform America is heritage pride.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to start realizing that, wait a second, you know, my parents had a role to play in building this country too. They say it's not like the old way where kings and queens took the credit and lords and dukes. It's the individual that built America. You see, somewheres that got forgotten. It was always the individual that built America. It was never any royalty or anything like that. That is what makes America unique in the history of this planet. It was built by the people for the people. And when Americans start remembering that and start holding their leaders, accountable, which is already happening. I mean, we've got audits, we've got court cases, got all kinds of shit going on. I mean, good thing Trump filled all those empty judge seats. You imagine the shit show right now with only 80 judges instead of 300 judges or over 300 judges. This is why the court cases are moving along very quickly. Trump put the foundation in, fucking using his fucking brain and thinking ahead, almost like Michael and the plan. Well, I'm sure it's not his plan. I'm sure he's just helping. I'm fairly certain he's just helping. And, you know, as long as he's doing a good job helping, good for him. Anyways, but yeah, that was a lot of foresight right there. Filling every seat that was empty. I think in the end he put in 365 judges. Plus the 80 that were already there. That's over 400 judges at the federal level to deal with only federal cases. Nothing to do with the states. So that means that when a state violates the Constitution, it's the federal judge that has to rule on it. You see the problem the states are having, that these woke states that want to try to change the Constitution? I mean, they might have got away with it with only 80 federal judges, but when you have 400 of them, people can seek remedy in the courts now. And that is making the difference right now in what's going on down in the States. And I think it's the number one difference. If it wasn't for those federal judges ruling on cases, things would not be moving along as quickly as this. And this is probably another reason why they're in a hurry. But still, it's because with that many judges, the Patriots can get out ahead lawfully. That's the important thing. This is I've said it before. We have to move on to the path of light and life lawfully. We can't do it through blood sacrifice. We've got to do it lawfully. And so that means the slow, tedious route But in the end, what will end up happening is that we will have done it without a war and without bloodshed. It's the only way. And because if there is war and bloodshed, then we will end up on the path of death and destruction. Because if war starts now, it will never stop.
Right.
Ever. They thought they were well on their way by keeping the wars going in the Middle East, but Trump shut it all down. And so that put an end to that. But if they are able to start it back up, it will never stop again. Just like...
And I have to...
Go ahead.
I have to remember, even myself, to restrain myself from saying certain things to people. On one of the Facebook pages, somebody was talking about, this was before November 3rd, or during the weeks leading up to it, when there was early voting and stuff. It was a left-leaning atheist who was complaining, or talking about the what was it? Say the Oath Keepers, or some Second Amendment group that was carrying rifles around the polling places, and they were accusing them of the same thing that the right has accused, Antifa of, keeping the right away from the, but the difference was, I'm sure, that if somebody wanted to go and vote, whichever side of the political spectrum they were on, the guys with the rifles would probably let them. And anyway, long story short, I was saying, you're frightened by somebody something about their expressing their Second Amendment rights, and he said, if there were a bunch of people with rifles standing around by my car, something about that, oh, they're just they'd be like, oh, they're just expressing their Second Amendment rights. And first, false equivalency. Second, and I did not say this, I have not said this to anybody, but I'm like thinking, we don't want people like you voting anyway. And I think that I must restrain myself from saying things like that, because A, it's counterproductive, and B, it's just not a direction that anybody needs to go. And I need to, if I'm to be any kind of example for anybody, the term short-term gain, long-term loss, or it isn't even a gain, it's just mudslinging or putting somebody down for being ignorant or something. So there's a few things I need to remember not to say and do. But yeah, no, I just in case anybody thinks that I'm not experiencing a fundamental conflict and difficulties in this time, I have to run everything through a processor to see whether it's a legitimate or even a whatever, it's, I have to double check the filter between my brain and my mouth. Sure. My brain and my keyboard. It's a Hippocratic oath almost. First, do no harm. Because this guy is not my enemy. He can't hurt me. There's bigger things happening on higher levels than we can actually do anything about. There are things we can do, and we should. But attacking these people who have, for whatever reason, allowed fearmongers to manipulate them is not, well, tempting. It's not a good idea.
Yeah. That actually reminds me of an incident that I had. I was talking with somebody, and they're like, if people would just like follow all the government rules, then we would get out of this faster. And I was like, yeah, but we did follow all of the rules and they lied to us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they didn't lie to us. We got more variants. Okay. And then they went on to say that they have not seen their mother in almost a year. And I'm like, why? I was like, COVID. And I'm just like, I'm just thinking, I mean, what's going through my mind is you must not really care about your mother. Because I know that if I was in New Brunswick and I want to visit my mother, who lives, independently, I would just call her up and I would leave it in her ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be like, okay, Mom, like to come and see ya. How do you feel about that?
Mm-hmm.
But this person was just blindly following government mandate. And I'm just like, wow. It's like, where's the freedom of choice? I mean, I'm wondering, does her mother have a decision in this?
Mm-hmm.
So she just took it upon herself not to go see her mother because the government said so. But I'm wondering, did you have a conversation about this with your mother? I was like, wow. So, I mean, this is what it's doing, but it's even worse than that, too. I mean, you've got seniors dying alone. I mean, how fucked is that? I mean, what happened to nobody should die alone? I mean, shit, I remember like there was like actual hospital programs to sit with dying
Mm-hmm.
patients. And I'm just like, what happened to people not dying alone? And people are now dying alone and nobody gives a fuck. Amazing what fear does to people. Makes them
Mm-hmm.
forget all their human sensibilities. I mean, what about the addict? What about the abused child? We don't care about them anymore. I think I've been on this rant before, but I'm pretty sure it's valid and it
Mm-hmm.
annoys the shit out of me. It's like
Yeah.
we've forgotten our most vulnerable communities in favor of fear. That to me is just disgusting. Mm. And can you imagine what's going on with like how are the mentally unstable doing during all of
Mm-hmm.
this? Mentally ill. I mean, handicapped people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what are they experiencing through all of this? I mean, some people need help with their daily routines. How badly has that been interrupted? I mean, shit, I seen a guy going down the street today in a wheelchair that had no foot steps on it. He had one foot twisted, and he's like pushing with his pulling with his feet and pushing with his hands.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at this guy going down the street, and I'm like, "That's not your wheelchair, is it, buddy? That can't be your wheelchair."
Mm-hmm.
So if it's not your wheelchair, that means that you got to the lobby and you got in a wheelchair and you got the hell out of somewheres.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, like, wow, where are you escaping from? And he did look like he was like pretty stressed.
Mm.
I'm like, wow. I was like, this shit's taking its toll on everybody. It's like, so yeah. Uh,
Well, let's see if we can end on a positive note. Something
mhm.
you said earlier, I think we may be starting to see the fastest part of the cascade effect yet. Things have
Mm,
been set in motion. They're going along. Maybe we can't see them all. and there have been fairly quick developments, I think. So I bet you the closer you get to the end, you the way I see it is I imagine you have one of those pyramids. It's easier. You knock out the very bottom layer and it drops down one layer, and there's x minus 1 blocks squared, and then you knock out the next layer and it drops down one layer. Every layer you knock out and it drops down, you're knocking out, I don't know, you're shortening your thing 5% or something, say. By the time you've got, say it's 100 blocks wide and 100 blocks tall, and every layer is 1 block narrower.
Oh, it's
so
exponential.
That's 5% or 1%, whatever it is. Yeah, so you get down to your last 5 layers are going to go, you only got 20 blocks and then 15 blocks and then 5, whatever. You're down to nothing like fast.
Really fast.
We've taken out probably a greater percentage of the pyramid than we're actually thinking, maybe. Or we're somewhere in the middle of the pyramid. We're heading for the top of it, and it's just going to keep speeding up.
I think that you're probably right. And I'll know how close we are to the end because, like you said, there's less work being done. The visions will come faster and faster and faster. They probably won't have any more clarity than they already have, but they're going to end up being like one right after the other. And it'll probably, I'll probably be having them during the day, which might be annoying.
Yeah. The weird, or I don't know. I guess if tongue-in-cheek, I guess if I could ask for one thing through all this is if I could get a progress bar, but it'd be twisted in some geometric shape that only Michael would understand anyway. So we'll know about when it's done, I think. We'll have an idea. We'll be able to see it. We'll be able to feel it. I think we'll be able to feel it. Yeah.
I think that we'll be able to feel it. And actually, I'm kind of looking forward to how it all kind of manifests.
Just seeing how it happens.
Yeah, it's like, man, it's like I see the plan and I know the plan, but it's the details. I mean, I can see the whole thing, how it's all laid out, but I don't know the details.
Yeah.
The finer details of what's going on.
I have no doubt. I have as much faith that it is being carried out in the best way possible, even as if my fictional quantum androids were on it. But in my story, I give them the final say. I just give them instructions. I don't even, the way I design them, I'm not even authorized to give them orders. I can ask them to do something, and if it's legit, they'll go and do it, maybe. Anyway, if I ask them to do something good, they're not our slaves. They're our brothers and sisters that I created for the world. And I can say, hey, you who specialize in such and such, there's this situation that maybe, can you check it out and maybe fix it up? And they'll go see about it. So I have no doubt this is happening. As if my own, I have as much faith in the system, the thing happening, as if I sent my own custom-made agents to do it. But they forget to send me updates until the job is finished.
And I don't think.
And that's fine. That's fine. What the movie posters that Q posted? You're going to love how this movie ends.
I mean,
just keep remembering that.
Yeah, I think, if it is rapture, that probably would be wonderful, because it would mean that all the truly evil and sinful people will be obliterated off the planet. And that will give the rest of us a chance to build a better world. Now, and here's the thing, okay? People need to understand how the universe judges, okay? It's not judgment like in the Bible. God, no.
Yeah, no, it's not like you think, folks.
No.
Let's get that.
Okay.
Let's clear that up right away.
The Urantia book actually clarifies it for us. How lovely. It does. I mean, the book clarifies a lot of things. And so here is what the Urantia book says. It says that freedom is absolute, free will is absolute, and potential is supreme over actual. Now, what that means is that if you're trying, that counts. It's the people that aren't trying that are evil and sinful. The ones that don't even have an inclination to even try to be a good person. See ya the fuck later. Good riddance to bad rubbish. But the people who are trying, it doesn't have to be, I mean, as for the blood sacrifice, God, it sickens me. I mean, it's a satanic ritual. There was no blood sacrifice. Jesus went to the cross because he knew that that was the best way to effect the morphogenic field of this planet. He knew that that was going to do it. I mean, it was extreme, but the Father had already told him, if you really want to save these people, you're going to have to let them hurt you. I think Michael thought about it, and he was like, shit, the Father's right. It's the only way that I'm going to affect the morphogenic field of that planet enough that it will sway the people onto the path of light and life. I mean, you think about it, 2,000 years? I mean, Christianity got mankind through the Dark Ages.
Mm-hmm.
You can say what you want about, you know, the witch hunts, the Spanish Inquisition, the destruction that Christianity has done. And I know there's probably atheists out there that would point these things out to me, and I am well aware of these incidences. So, you know, you don't have to educate me. But on the other side of the coin, Christianity has done far, far more good than it has destruction. And, you know, so, I mean, people are worried about losing traditions. Some traditions were worth losing, people. Trust me. There's some of them that were worth losing. I mean, you know, I think that we're at a point in society where we should be making new traditions and, you know, and honoring the Father in a more, I don't know, evolved way, more intelligent way. And, you know, I mean, you know, there's things that we can do in our modern society to honor the Father, which would be far, far more superior than what our ancestors did. So there's that to be considered. But we got to move forward on a spiritual path. And this is the best part. Because potential is what's surviving, you're still going to have a world full of people that are not going to agree. There's still going to be Muslims. There's still going to be Jews. There's still going to be Christians. There's still going to be Buddhas. There's still going to be Hindi. You name it, it's still going to be here. It's not going away.
There's still going to be atheists.
There's still going to be atheists. Good ones. Yes.
The good of everybody. I'm not picking on the atheists. I actually respect most atheists very much. Most everybody very much.
Well, I mean, some atheists have developed their own philosophy.
Absolutely.
And that philosophy is perfectly acceptable to the universe. Mm-hmm. Perfectly. If that philosophy is constructive and helpful, the universe is fine with it because the universe works in cooperation. It's yeah, I mean, our universe is a building and growing universe, not a destructive universe. So if you're doing things that are constructive, then the universe looks at that as spiritual potential. The atheist might shun it, might even not even like that idea, might get him a little pissed off, but hey, you develop your own philosophy, so you'll learn. After a while, you'll discover that, same thing that I discovered. Once you put the Father at the center of your philosophy, oh, the doors that open up to you. Oh, everything opens up. It's like hacking the universe. You get like the more, and then once you discover that the more you cooperate with the Father, the thought adjuster within you, the more, I don't know how to describe it, the more privileges you get in the universe, I guess. I guess
Yes.
it's yeah. It's like playing a video game. Really, it is. It can be like playing a video game. You're just going up levels is all you're doing. With more knowledge, more spirituality, you just keep going up levels and and if you've got one focus, which is the Father, well, the Father's at the end of all paths. So if you focus on the Father, then you're going to be on a path that's going to start opening up things to you. And, you'll get there sooner or later, and it doesn't have to be like, it's, I don't know, it can be whatever you want it to be. Really. It's like the path to light in life is like the trunk of a tree. It's like you start at the trunk of the tree, which is the basic understanding of spirituality. And then after you've got the basic spiritual roots and a strong spiritual trunk, you can branch off in whatever direction you want. And you're not going to get lost because you have that spiritual foundation, that spiritual trunk that you always come back to. And it's like, so you might go out one branch, explore. You might find that that's a dead end. Spiritually, that's a dead end branch, but you explored it. Fine, that's an experience. Oh, you might get out to the end of a branch, and then you realize that, holy shit, this thing is going to dead end on me. So you jump to another branch. You don't have to backtrack. You can jump over to a branch. It's like, oh, okay, then let's go over here. Let's see what's going on over here. Oh, okay, yeah, this is fun. These people are crazy too. Jump to another branch. Once you set your focus, all paths are going to lead to the same spot. Once you set your focus.
I remember Ram Dass talks about it as the path up a mountain. There's, depending on the mountain, there's going to be lots of them, but they all kind of lead the same place, to the top of it.
Yeah, exactly. It all going to lead.
Heard it.
Yeah, no, and it's all going to lead to the same place. So it doesn't matter how you get there. I mean, what you think that every planet in the universe has a Jesus that sacrificed themselves somehow or martyred themselves in one way or another? Don't be ridiculous. And if you think this planet is the extent of our Creator's imagination, now you're just being silly.
Yeah, I think even now, there's most Christians agree that there must be life on other planets, or they wouldn't be surprised if there's life on other planets. I haven't, of all the fundamentalist evangelical Christians that I've met on the Facebook groups, and maybe some of them don't, I don't know. Anyway, all that I have seen this question posed to, or that I recall that I've seen this question posed to, they don't seem opposed to the idea of other intelligent life in the universe.
No, and that was part of the plan too. Acclimate us to the idea of life on other planets. This is going to be necessary. It's going to be necessary in the future for us to be able to accept that there is life out there in the cosmos. It's really the only way forward. I mean, how dumbed down does a planet get when it believes that it's the center of the universe? I mean, really. I mean, this planet was dumbed down hardcore. I mean, that stupid shit held in there for like thousands of years. So it also goes to show you just that the enemy can override your good senses as well. Because I mean, even even after science has proven that our planet, it goes around the sun, and actually it's even more complicated than just going around the sun. Got to understand, the sun's moving through the solar system or through the galaxy too. So we're actually spiraling through the universe.
Yeah, if you look at 3D with the taking into the sun's motion into account, the movement of the Earth is, it makes a spiral. It's a corkscrew through space. It's not going around in the same place all the time.
It's a helix.
Why do you think we keep having different meteor showers and things? If we went around and around in the same part of space, we'd kind of clear out all the meteors, I think.
Yeah. And that's
we'd encounter
that's
different energy clouds, and we'd encounter maybe stuff that interacts with the sun and makes it spit out different things at different times. I don't know about that, but it just occurred to me. I know the sun has various periodic things that it does at different rates.
No, you hit the nail on the head. There are energies that are created out in the cosmos, and it is expected that suns and planets will pass through them. This is also one way that Michael cannot be accused of manipulating or favoring any one system over another. There's a lot of things Michael has to think about when you're dealing with free-willed entities. And so the ones that actually control these energy clouds that certain planets will go through at certain phases are actually the life carriers, corpse. They will move this energy in space. I mean, this cloud that we are moving through right now, it started its journey into our path probably about 1 million years ago. Or maybe 500,000 years ago, who knows? But it's the life carriers were doing their work a long time ago. Yeah. So that everything would coincide at the proper time to do a certain event. This is the other reason why I think everybody's in a hurry, why the other side's in a hurry, is because this event is going to take place at a certain time, no matter what they do. They can't affect this energy. So
that's what I'm getting,
Yeah, so Now, whatever level of intention we are at, when we are like fully immersed into this cloud, that will be the intention that will dominate this epoch for the next 1,000 years. And so this is why these years are critical, is because we have to start our march onto the path of light and life, so that once we pass through this energy, that will be the primary motivation in the morphogenic fields. I mean, 2,000 years ago, what Michael put into the morphogenic fields was a will to be like him, is what he put in the morphogenic field. And to be like him means to do the will of the Father. You see how he leapfrogged that?
Mm-hmm.
And so he sealed it with his own death, because his own death was such a horrific experience that it seared every utterance that he made into the minds of the people that interacted or witnessed him, and they could not help but go and tell their story about the time that they met this Jesus of Nazareth and the words that he spoke. And then those words would touch somebody else, and then those words would touch somebody else. And you also got to remember the Spirit of truth was poured out in full in the same area that he did his ministry. So imagine pouring a jug of milk out on the floor. The bulk of the accumulation of that milk is going to be where you poured it. And then after you stop pouring, it's going to level itself out. And it's going to keep leveling itself out until it has run itself so thin that it cannot run itself out anymore. The Spirit of truth made its way around the world starting at that point. So when all those people went out and started telling Jesus's story, they were again reinforcing the morphogenic field. Actually, when you think about it, Jesus really created a situation that compelled people to tell his story.
Hmm.
When you really think about it. So he didn't actually do the work. Everybody telling their story did the work of solidifying that story into the morphogenic field. He was the
Basically, what he did was he just did his thing, and it was such a stupendous spectacle or event or experience, let's say, for the people that they had to share it with everybody.
They shared it with the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had his 12 apostles plus the hundreds of disciples.
Yeah.
And they all went out and told the story. I mean, can you imagine how many disciples went out when they discovered that the apostles were not shook, and that they just went at it even harder to spread the message? That would have inspired hundreds of disciples to go and do the same thing. And it did. I mean, we look at history, we already know that it did. It inspired them to go to all four corners of the world. I mean, like I said, the Catholic Church, for all the evil shit that it has done, it still sent good missionaries into places to teach the people and to get rid of this tribal concept, which was stifling our evolution, and to come and get people thinking about in the terms of community instead of tribes. I mean tribal. I mean, that's what the enemy wants us to go back to. I mean, the enemy would love for us to go back to tribalism, but there's no progress with tribalism. You just got tribes fighting each other and killing each other all the time. I mean, community is much better, and because it means that you can community. Thinking in terms of community allows us to think outside the tribe. It allows us to think in terms of where we live, geographically, the people that we share our life with, and in the 21st century, latter half of the 20th century, it has expanded to the world as a community. So the concept of community was could evolve. It was expandable. It could be built upon. Whereas the concept of tribe, it stagnates, because it's like, if you're not of my blood, then you're not of my tribe. So you just end up with just a stagnant gene pool and a stagnant society all the time. So this is why we have to evolve out of these things. And we also have to evolve past race issues. Well, there actually really isn't a race issue on this planet, except the race issue that the oligarchs are pushing upon us. I mean, most of the race issues that are being dealt with today in America and in Canada would have been dealt with a long time ago if we had faithful leaders, but we don't. They're, they have masters that they serve besides the constituents that voted for them. In the case of Canada, our prime minister doesn't actually serve the people, it serves the crown and the interests of the crown. And Canada, I mean, when you really look at the documentation for Canada, it's like we're just a vessel for creating wealth to send to the royal family. We're a resource.
It's like the American colonies were before 1776.
Yeah, just a resource. All the I mean, personally, I think that the whole royal family bloodline bullshit has ran its course. It's time to just let it die and just fade on into history, like so many other things. Just, I think America probably has it about right, and it's probably why Russia has so closely modeled its own system after the American system. And it's just on a lot bigger scale and done in a Russian type fashion. Like, a lot of people don't know the Russian Constitution, the Russian Constitution of the Russian Federation. They took a lot out of the American Constitution and put it in their own, and just put a slightly, instead of 4 years for a term, they did 6. Why 6? Is because Russians like things to stay the same for longer periods of time. They don't they don't appreciate change nearly as much as Americans do. I mean, Americans love change. They're always looking for it. I mean, it's an American thing. Russians aren't like that. That's why they chose to go 6 years for a presidential term. That's why it seems like Putin is a dictator. Americans aren't used to seeing somebody be in office for 12 fucking years. To Americans, that is a shock. I mean, they look up here in Canada and see that we have the same leader for 10 years. I mean, 10 years I think is about the limit for the American imagination for any leader's term.
10 years is an eternity for an American.
Yeah, but when I think they look up
Yeah,
here
no,
at
I understand
Canada.
what you mean.
Yeah.
I understand what you're talking about. Oh, and I did want to. There's a couple of things you said that made me really think. The first was about the Russians adopting lots of the American Constitution. I was thinking when the American Constitution was kind of first created and ratified and things. I wonder if they did send a they may have made the text of it or whatever available to anybody who wanted to look at it. I suppose other countries would have reached out to them and said, "This is interesting what you're doing. Can I take a look at this thing? Can we see what this piece of paper is that you're basing your society on, you're basing your country on?" And I imagine that it was given to anybody who asked to see it, a copy, I suspect. Or they
There
let them make
was
their own copy. I suppose I don't know exactly how they did it, but they would show it to people, I think. Or did they? I don't know how that went.
I'm remembering a story, and I'm thinking this is Benjamin Franklin's story, where several diplomatic packages were made up, and all the documentations establishing America, copies of everything that was establishing America, including the Constitution, was all placed in these ornate boxes. And these boxes were delivered to various leaders around the world at that time. And I'm pretty sure Benjamin Franklin, delivered one to France. And so, yeah, there was something, what you just said, something like that done. And these are held in the archives of these various nations. So it's basically, it's like holding a promise for somebody. So that, like say a country like Russia, I mean, if a country, I suppose in a way, a country could actually, another country could actually force America to follow its own constitution when you really think about it.
I suppose they could. They could at least beat them over the head with it. Say, this thing, I read this thing, it says this, you're doing this instead. Maybe you should change that.
And you know what? I think that it's probably happened in the early history of America, but since the globalist agenda that was established in the 1960s, I don't think it would ever have a chance of happening now, because too many other countries are on board with the agenda. And if America is making that march towards that agenda, what would be the point in pointing out that they're violating their own laws?
Oh, and the other thing you said about your interpretation of the Canadian documents being that it is a subsidiary or tributary, whatever it was that the Americas were called, a resource generating thing. Something nobody ever talked to. We had a good friend who was very active politically and very interested in political and societal things. We had some very good discussions with him. He brought up a lot of things that people don't talk about. And one of the things I think he would be interested in discussing is how much of our revenue, whatever, generated in Canada, maybe still to this day, I don't know, is sent to England.
It's a scandalous amount. It's a disgusting amount. I don't know the exact figures right off the top of my head, but I know it's in the billions. It's disgusting. And yeah, constantly sending money over, constantly. And it's not just money. It's also human trafficking that's taking place as well. I was trying to find a less horrific way to describe it, but I'm describing it in a real nice way of what actually goes on. And why has Canada's population stagnated at 36 million for the last 30 years? Questions that cannot be answered. I haven't looked at Australia, New Zealand, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, but it might not surprise me to find that their population numbers have stagnated at a certain threshold and have not passed that threshold. So, you know, what's the deal? Is it because Canadians don't like sex? I mean, really, I mean, we got a lot of cold winters here. What the hell else are you going to do? I mean, back in the 60s, Canada's population was booming, just booming. And then somewhere through the 80s, it petered out and it just kind of stagnated. Things that make you go, I have no idea what that means. Yeah, things that make you go,
And we're closing on the end of our third hour of this discussion, so I think it might be a good idea to wind it down for the night. Anyway,
we shouldn't put people through this.
I think we'll have to cap it at about 2, but then we have the most interesting part of the talk after that, because we get the energy going. Anyway, I wrote down a couple questions for next time, and we can
yeah, better not ask any more questions.
Have some discussion about the time limit of this thing. Anyway, thanks very much. This has been Peter.
And this is Krow. Thanks for being with us.
This has been P&K Q&A for May the 1st. Peace out.
Salute.